Painting Platsil silicone. Today we're going to show how to create a realistic paint job over a platinum silicone skin. Now the first thing we'll need is a clean platinum silicone skin free of any release agents or oils, and that can be done by wiping your piece down with acetone to make sure it's free of any release agent. Now we'll be using Platsil gel tint as a paint base. Most of you will have skins cast up in one of the gel series silicones like Gel 25 or Gel 10 or Gel 00, and the best thing to bond to that is another gel series silicone. Now today we'll be using Gel 10, and since we'll be working in a very small amount, I'm only going to mix up about 40 grams. We're going to weigh this out on a gram scale, and that just ensures that we get accurate measurements on that small of a scale. You don't want to have to mix up more than you need just to hit those graduated lines on the side of your mixing cup. And once we mix up our A and B, we're ready to thin that out for painting. Now to thin our gel tin, we'll use our solvent thinner. Now you can also use Naptha, but solvent thinner is nice because it's no VOCs. And we're going to cut that about half and half with the solvent thinner. And the solvent thinner will accomplish two things. It gives us more working time, and it also thins it so it's easier to create thin washes of color. And also we can thin it enough to put it through an airbrush if necessary. Now super important, anytime you're working with a solvent, take the right precautions for that solvent. Work in a well-ventilated area and wear an organic filter mask if necessary. Make sure you check out the solvent you're using and make sure you take the right precautions. Uber important to protect your lungs. Now we're ready to add pigment to our paint base, and to do that we're going to use our silicone pigments, and these are pure silicone oil pigments. You don't want to get too creative here and put just anything in your silicone and cause the cure to fail. Make sure you use silicone pigments. And depending on the concentration we use, that's going to determine how translucent or how opaque it is. For painting silicone, we want to create very light washes of color. Now we're going to be doing a brush paint job, and to do that we want some good quality brushes that don't have bristles that are going to fall out in the middle of our paint job. So make sure you invest in some good quality brushes for any kind of brush painting application. Now this will be a fairly simple paint job with just 4 colors, and you'll notice that our silicone face is cast in a fairly light flesh tone. And the reason for that is when you're painting silicone, when you're painting a translucent silicone like this, you can always go darker, but you can never go lighter without opaquing the paint job. So you always want to start out with the lightest flesh tone of your subject and work up from that point. Now we're starting by creating a mottled look with red all over the face, but you'll notice we're concentrating on the more vascular areas like the lips, the eyes, the nose, and the ears. And I like to over apply that a little bit in that, again, you'll see I'm dabbing that on with the brush, creating that kind of mottled effect. And then I use a clean paper towel to just dab that back and pull off any excess paint that we've put on. And that, you mainly want to watch out for any kind of puddles or any drips that might form if you apply way too much. Now since gel tin does catalyze, you want to make sure you clean your brushes before it starts to cure. And after each layer that you put on, you want to make sure you clean out your brush really well with more of the solvent thinner. Or if you're using Naptha, use more Naptha. Now after each layer we put on, we're going to set that layer using a hairdryer or heat gun. And the reason for that is we want to set each layer so that the next layer we put on won't smudge that first layer, and that keeps all those color layers independent of each other. Now for our second layer, we added just a little bit more of the brown pigment to our red color, and we did that just so I could go in and get more color on the lips. And I want to be really careful here not to go too opaque. You'll notice we're building up our color in light washes, and when you're working in a silicone, translucent silicone like this, it's a good idea to keep all of your colors very transparent or very translucent. If you go too opaque, you can destroy that realistic look very quickly. So we want to build this up gradually in lots of translucent washes to get that realistic color. And the nice thing is, because we do have some time before that really starts to set and bond to that previous layer of silicone, if we make a mistake, we can always go in there with a clean paper towel and wipe that off and start over again. Now we're ready to move on to another layer. So again, we're going to use a hairdryer to set that layer. And Gel tin normally has a cure time of about 30 minutes, but using hot air like this, we can move ahead in another 5 or 10 minutes easily. Now we're going to apply some blue, and again we use the same technique. We mixed up our silicone, about 40 grams of gel tin, and we thinned it half and half using solvent thinner. Now we're going to apply the blue much in the same way that we did the red, following much of the vascular areas of the face. But we also, much like the red, we want to stipple that all over. And you'll be surprised how much that blue really brings out a lot of life in the face. Even though it seems like it wouldn't, the blue really complements the red. And because we've done that in two separate layers that are both cured, we don't have that mixing to form purple. We have actually your eye mixes those two colors together to create a very realistic flesh tone. And to get an idea of how this works, it's a good idea to study the palms of your hands and look in the mirror and look at your face, see what colors are there. You'll be surprised how many blues and greens and colors that you see that you wouldn't think of as typical flesh tones. Now remember, as soon as you apply a layer, you want to clean out your brush before that sets using solvent thinner. And now we're ready to set that layer using a hairdryer. And again, that'll help our turnaround time so we can go with our next layer in about 10 minutes. It'll be ready to accept another layer of silicone paint. Now here I'm using a very light wash of yellow. And I'm using a fan brush here to apply it. Don't know why, that just seemed like the thing to do at the time. But I'm going to stipple that all over. Again, I want to use a fairly mottled pattern. And that helps knock down those reds a little bit and help them not look too red. Now, as with our other layers, you want to make sure that you clean your brush really good in more solvent thinner or naphtha. And then you're ready to set that layer using a hairdryer. Now ready for our final color, dark brown. We're going to first make a flick brush using a cut down chip brush, and we're going to use that to flick on some freckles. And to do that, we've mixed up some dark brown silicone pigment with some more gel tin thinned with the solvent thinner. And we're just going to flick that on to create realistic freckles. And to do that, it's a good idea to practice and check your color before you flick that onto your silicone piece at this stage so you don't ruin it. And you want to have a clean paper towel handy because sometimes it's necessary to subdue those freckles by dabbing it very carefully with a clean paper towel, and that knocks those down a little bit if the drips are too big. You'll find if your drips are too large when you do this technique, they could actually cure to become little three-dimensional bumps. So you want to be careful to avoid that, and you want just very light flicks of paint to get a very realistic freckle pattern. Now, one thing you can do with your paint base, you'll notice that we have to work pretty fast because the set time of gel tin dictates that we have a very limited working time with each layer of paint. If you want more working time, you can always add the 7173R retarder. That mixed 1% with your gel tin will double the working time. So remember, that's always an option, especially if you're airbrushing and you need additional working time. Now you'll notice when I'm dabbing those freckles, I'm making a deliberate effort to push straight down and pull that paper towel straight back up. This is important because we don't want to accidentally turn our little freckles into lines by creating little streaks or smudges. So you want to make sure you make that very deliberate up and down motion. And now ready to set that layer of freckles using our heat gun or our hair dryer. And now we have our finished paint job. Now you'll notice it has a gloss on the surface. To remove the gloss or shine, we're going to powder our finished piece. And we're just going to use some translucent face powder. And this is powder you can pick up at most costume shops. Most beauty supply places have a matting powder, but you just need a standard translucent face powder. And we're going to brush that all over our piece and then brush it back off. And at this point we can even wash it off because we have that paint is very well bonded to our silicone skin underneath. And there you have your finished silicone paint job, which if done properly is bonded very well to the point it can be used for prosthetics, animatronic skins, or prop heads. And of course, all of the supplies used in this video are available on our web store at brickintheyard.com.